Good morning. It is Saturday, the 9th of May, and here I am with a small channeling, but a story. So I felt today that I needed to actually speak to you without always reading what I had received. And I was a little bit filled with trepidation, and I couldn't understand why. And this is what they said to me. They've given me a little brief introduction as to explain to me my trepidation of sharing the story I'm about to share with you. So I said to them, "Dear Dominus and Aurelius, dear DNA, what is it that you wish to share with me today?" The very first word you wrote was fear. And yet if you place a D in front of it, it becomes dear. So what is it that is dear to you all? And what is it that you all fear? Mostly it's the approval of your tribe, your fellow earthlings, your family. And that is why they say all those that are near and dear to you. You were wondering today if you should tell the story of the day that you helped us clean the ocean, and yet you were fearful of the reaction that you would or could receive from telling the story. Do you also see that the word could or would is so vastly different, and yes, it's so very similar? All it has to change, it is the very first letter, a C or a W. A first letter is like the first step in life. It can make an enormous difference to your life. Many steps and many letters have found you here today, ready to tell one of your stories. For all of you have many stories, and multiplied, they then tell a fuller story, the story of who you are. We wish for you today to tell one of your stories, one of your chapters in your book called Life, so that many others may also begin to share theirs. We look forward to later on this year when you start holding evenings for humanity called My Story, which will allow many, many voices to be heard. When we spoke to you 10 years ago on a winter's day, we said to you, let the discourse begin. You had no idea what that meant, and you did not know me either. You were only holding a discourse, a conversation with Aurelius. And yet I introduced myself on that day, Dominus. Our discourse began. We would like you now to share many of our discourses with you, with humanity. So it is apt that you start with sharing our very beginning. Let the discourse begin. Okay, guys. So this is a crazy story. If somebody else told me the story, I would assume that they were ready for a craziness, that they had something missing upstairs, that they had an incredible imagination. Yeah, I seriously would not believe it. But when these things happen to you, and so many of them have happened to me over the last 20 years, and it's like my life is like science fiction novel. It really is. It's just incredible. And I'm sure many of you have equally amazing, fabulous adventures to share with all of us. Of course, none of them are going to be the same, because none of us are the same. So here we go. This is going to be weird. Okay. So in 2010, we were living in Wanaka, and I decided to work from home because it was really, really cold that day. It was May, very, very wintry. I had a fire going, and I decided to make myself a cup of tea. So I walked from my office to the kitchen, and as I walked, my mouth started drooping on one side, and I thought, wow, I'm about to have a stroke. Instead, my mouth opened, and I started speaking the most bizarre language you could ever imagine. As bizarre as it was, deep down within me, I recognized it. It was something very familiar to me. That in itself sounds crazy, I know. So this voice kept on talking out loud, and it then changed to English as I found myself striding towards the curtains and pulling the curtains open, and it said, "You have been chosen. You are a channel. Open up your heart and let the light in. It is time for the discourse to begin." Well, of course, I had no idea what that was. I immediately went to my office, and I picked up the phone, and I phoned a friend of mine in Auckland who's a very well-known clairvoyant and medium. And I said to her, "Look, this has just happened to me." And she passed the phone over to another lady that was staying with her, that was an original clairvoyant on national radio in New Zealand many, many years ago. And she asked me to tell her what had happened. I told her, and she said to me, "Oh, that's the space brother speaking to you." And I said, "Well, what a load of rubbish." I said, "What's the point? I don't understand a word they're saying." And she said to me, "But Jill, you're so black and white that you need proof, and they want to show you they actually exist, and that's why they're speaking to you, physically showing you their presence." So I went back to the other lady, and I said to her, "Why did you pass me over to this Mary Fry?" And she said, "Because the same thing happened to me this week." I then put the phone down, and in that stage, all I had was Aurelius, which was my guide that I'd been speaking to. I then said to Aurelius, "Aurelius, what just happened? Who was that was speaking to me?" And he said, "Dominus." So I said, "Who's Dominus?" And he said, "Lord Protector, Lord Galactor, Lord Almighty over us all. We too bow unto and before him." And he then said, "You have now earned the right to work with Dominus." That night, my husband came home, and he really, at that stage, thought that I was really crazy and all these things that were happening to me. And I said to him, "Have you ever heard the word Dominus?" And he said, "Yes, I have." And I said, "Well, do you know what it means?" And he said, "Yes, it's God." And I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Because I was an altar boy, and I got kicked off the altar for asking somebody when I need to ring the bell, because it was in Latin, the Mass, and I didn't understand. And they used to say in the Catholic Church, Dominus, and that's God." So I thought, wow, okay. Just then my phone rang, and of course I was a real estate agent, and a client asked to see a house. So from hearing this incredible voice back into work mode, I got straight into my car, went to the house to open it up, and on the way, I said to whatever had just happened, "Okay, guys, if you really did speak to me and you really do exist, make it happen again." And with that, my mouth opened, and I started going, wah, 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 all over again. Arrived at the house, opened up the door, and just carried on as normal, thinking to myself, wow, if these people had only seen me a few minutes earlier, there's no way in hell that they would get me to show them a house. Well, 2 weeks later, this is when the craziness really, really hit home. Now, as a real estate agent, I used to buy a present for the buyer and the seller to say thank you very much, because I really appreciated them giving me their business. And the only house that I never bought a present for was a house that belonged to some farmers, and they had sold their farm, and they didn't have a forwarding address at the time. So every time I went past that house, I kept on looking to see if there was anybody there so that I could go and deliver a present. Well, 2 weeks later, after talking this gobbledygook, there was a car in the driveway. I pulled in, I knocked at the door, and the man answered. And I asked him if he was the particular guy, and he said no. And he called this lady to the front door, and she insisted that I go in. I explained the situation, and I said to her, I'd like to go and get a present for them, and can I come back and leave it? And they said, absolutely, that's fine. When I went back, she insisted that I have a cup of tea, and she handed me her card. When she gave me her card, it had all the rainbow colors on it, and it had 2 pyramids interlinked. When I asked her what it meant, she said, well, that's a double tetrahedron. And I thought, something's weird going on here. And I gave her my business card, and I explained to her that she should join the Wanaka Ski Club, because every Friday night they have drinks and she can meet locals and she can have somebody to ski with on the ski field, seeing as they came here every ski season. Now, that is all that that lady knew about me. She knew nothing about me other than I was a real estate agent. On the Monday, she phoned me and she said to me, do you have time for lunch? And I had 1 hour. And I said, yes, so let's meet at so-and-so. So we went to this cafe, we sat down, and as soon as we sat down, she looked at me and she said to me, I have a message for you. Are you hungry? I said, no, not particularly. So she said, well, that's okay. Let's go back to the house. Follow me. And I assumed that the message was going to be, thank you so much for the present. And I couldn't understand why she couldn't just give me the message of saying thank you for the present there and then. But instead, she got me to follow her back to the house. With that, she said to me, Jill, I'd like you to sit down on the chair. I feel that you need to sit down on the chair and I need to close my eyes with this message. Now, just remember, this lady knew nothing about me. I had just delivered a present for the owners of the house. And here she is getting me to follow her to the house because she has a message for me. And there I am sitting on a chair in the kitchen, and she closed her eyes, and out of her mouth came the words and the same language that I had been channeling 2 weeks before. I mean, isn't that insane? How do you even begin to explain something so bizarre? I looked around thinking, okay, this is a setup. My husband had obviously found out about this and decided to play a trick on me. And the very next minute, in my mind's eye, I saw a pyramid. And the next words from her were, they want to know, is a pyramid in place? And I thought, wow, this is too weird for words. And she said to me, they've got a very big favor to ask you. They are here. And there's been a recent oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. This is in 2010. And there's a real problem with it, and they'd like to use your vessel, your human vessel, to clean up the ocean. With that, inside, I really started laughing. I thought, okay, this has gone beyond ridiculous. And if these gods or beings or superpowers or source are so amazing, why can't they just clean up the ocean themselves? It just didn't make sense to me. So I decided to be very supercilious. I said, yeah, sure. And she then said, ground yourself. And at that stage, I'd heard about grounding, but I didn't really know what grounding meant. And I said to my guide, Aurelius, listen, if you want me to be grounded, you've got to ground me, because I don't really know. I don't understand what it is. And with that, I felt myself going through the ground, through molten lava, right into the center of the earth. And I heard a drip, drip, drip of water in this huge, huge cavern. And then it was water, fire, earth, air, boom, right out. Then I was grounded. And then they said, is the pyramid in place? And I felt that the pyramid that was like that turned like that below my belly button like a funnel. And then she started going whoosh, 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 whoosh all around me. And I was busy peeping, having a look to see what she was doing. And after a while, she said, yes, it's cleared. And they said, thank you so much. And then she started telling me a whole lot of other stuff. Okay, so if you think about it, there I am 2 weeks before, just going about my business, selling real estate, working from home. I think I'm having a stroke. My mouth opens and goes weird. This weird language comes out. I then find myself striding towards the curtains in our lounge, opening them up and being told that I need to let the discourse begin. I don't know what it is. And suddenly this is happening. So the very next day, I went to work. And as I walked in, the administrator said to me, did you watch the breaking news on television this morning? So I said, no. So she said, yes. She said, you know, Jill, the oil spill in Mexico has gone. I said, I beg your pardon? She said, yeah. She said, scientists have said that they think it's an organism that has just eaten it up overnight. Well, I just didn't know what to think. I was absolutely flabbergasted. And the only people that even knew what happened was myself and that lady called Jane Cayley. So how on earth do you ever explain anything so bizarre? And subsequently, I've now found out what they mean by the discourse. To hold a discourse means to hold conversations. Now, I've been quiet about many stories that have happened to me in my life because I don't like to be ridiculed or ostracized or rejected, as all of us don't wish to be. But by keeping quiet about these things that happen to us, is it not in a way really denying part of who you are, one of the chapters of your book called Life? And aren't we just the most incredible human beings, capable of so much more than what we ever thought we were? So I've decided now, through today, when they've asked me to now start telling these stories, all the things that have happened to me, to be brave, to be open to ridicule, because now, in actual fact, what does it really mean for somebody else not to approve of you? Should it really affect you? Those people who love you will always love you. Those who don't, won't. And then that's okay. Those are not your people, as they say. So I'm going to continue now each week to let you know about the absolutely amazing things in my life and the fantastic people that are coming into my life now that I am being brave. So in March, I went to Peru. I met a whole lot of new people, and we've discovered that that is part of my soul group, my Earth Soul group, and we've gone from incarnation to incarnation. And lo and behold, there I am in Peru, and suddenly I start channeling again for the first time in 10 years. So when it happened to me in May 2010, I wasn't asking for it. It wasn't something that I thought would ever happen to me. When I went to Peru, one of the girls, there were only 5 of us in this tiny little room, and one of the girls said to me afterwards, you know, Jill, as soon as you walked in, you said, I hear voices. I said, I didn't say that. I mean, I didn't even remember that. And yet I closed my eyes and suddenly this voice came out of me. And then it happened again 2 days later with messages for other people in this really, really strange language. And This is all new to me. I'm starting to learn channeling and conversations. Is it conversations with God? Dominus is God. Am I having a conversation like Neil Donald Walsh with God? And aren't we all, if we all come from God, aren't we all holding a conversation with God every day? Should we be ridiculed for holding a conversation with our Maker, with Source? I don't think so. So this year, in the area where I live, and I encourage you all to do this wherever you are in the world, is to hold an evening called My Story. And it's going to teach us about the people who we see every day, and all we see is a book cover. We just see the face, but we don't see the stories or the chapters within. And we need to get to know each other and each other's chapters and each other's stories so we can support each other more. We need to be vulnerable. We need to be all that we can be. So I look forward to sharing more of my story with you. I'll see you again on Wednesday on this platform. And until then, I'm sending you lots and lots of love during this difficult time. But, you know, we've had worse times than this in our human history, and we can get through this together. So lots and lots of love. Have a fabulous weekend, and thank you for watching. Cheers.